Hey guys, Volen here. I wanted to give you a quick update on what I've been working on. Don't worry, the camera's gonna disappear in a sec, so you'll be able to see behind my head. What this is I call it understanding drawing. And when I made my video about my 10,000 drawings, and I basically disappeared off of the internet for about a year, and I spent the majority of that time just drawing because I realized what a major gap this was in my skill set. And I also realized the importance of drawing. And the problem with that is that I only realized the importance of drawing after about 4 or 5 years of doing other stuff. And then as soon as I realized what drawing truly gave you as an artist, what a massively important skill it is, and how it basically just opens up the ability for you to do whatever it is that you want. Because if art is an illusion, if you're essentially creating this window that people can look through into the world that you're making, this is the ability. Drawing is essentially what's going to be in that window, but also how do you put things in there? How do you move things in space? It's a massively important skill, and it's also a compound skill. There's many different things that go into it. It has many different facets, and it also gets combined with theory. So it's not just practice, it's also theory, but it's also learning how to drill that theory in order to convert it into skill. There's so many things that are so difficult that I misunderstood and tried to avoid because I thought that it's this more outdated, clunky way to do things. I thought I'd be doing 3D software and things like that, only to realize that drawing is actually the fastest and probably most fluid way to create things. So having to admit then that, I didn't really train the right things. I had to go back in and relearn a lot of stuff. Then a lot of people ask me, well, how do you get started? So this project of understanding drawing has been my attempt as best I can to try and answer that. I've tried to think through things from the perspective of a beginner, of someone who can't necessarily see how drawing is made up of all of these hundreds of little micro skills. To them, everything is just one big homogeneous skill. But the problem with that is that when you can't train the different skills in isolation, essentially they compound. So you may actually be good at one thing, but because you're trying to do 17 different things at once and you don't see that you're doing 17 different things, over time the entire final outcome deteriorates. So being able to see the boundaries in between the different skills and between the different subjects is massively important, because then you can also give yourself feedback of where exactly did you fail. So I've tried to organize things into levels and skills. I've also tried to outline some of the traps that I've fallen into, like not being able to see further ahead and staying in the same place for far too long, training things that aren't really that important in the big scheme of things and spending far too much time on them because I overvalue them just because I suck at them right now and I want to improve them. But really, I'm not seeing the fact that they're not really that important. It would have been far better if I spent my time elsewhere. And those levels that we've identified over here, I'll essentially be taking you through in my own work how I went through those levels. And I've actually collected some work that's before I even got into any of those levels. I've started basically from symbolic drawing, from having absolutely no idea how to do anything, trying to do it from my head, thinking somehow, like not really understanding the process of an artist, just not understanding how a skilled artist is able to do what it is that they do, but I would just be trying to do things out of my head because I would see people, if I watch videos, I would just see them making something and I would have no idea how they draw it. I would just think that they just sit down, think of something, and then just draw it. So I'll be taking you from very early days to then going through those same levels that we just looked at and how I trained those skills and how I got better over time. And again, some of my biggest mistakes and some of the things that I realized are more important. I'm just quickly scrolling you through these because we're really not going to spend any time on this right now. This will be in the final when it gets finished. You can check out my 10,000 drawings video if you want to see some more of the work that went into relearning how to draw. So you can check out, there's also some CAD modeling in there and some 3D and some paintings and things like that. So you can have a look at that video if you want to see some more of that. So what you'll be seeing today is a clip from the intro. It's something that will more than likely stay in the final, as is or close to what it is. So it'll be an intro, an overview of the things that we'll be talking about in the final mini course lecture when it gets finished. If you're interested in more stuff about it, there'll be more after the video, but let's just get started with it now. I want to spend a little bit of time and walk you through this main screen that we have on right now, because this is where we'll be spending a lot of our time today. I wanted it to look like something from an RPG game. One, because I think a lot of people would be familiar with roleplay games, and to me, they were always fun because you had a character that you had to develop, but then you also had these things that are out there in the world, places that you need to go visit and traps that you need to be aware of, that you might get caught in. So we're gonna have our levels that we're gonna talk about today. And these are going to be the different progressions of your skill, but also these are going to be very closely related to how deeply you can engage with an image. How much freedom do you have to express what it is that's in your head, what ideas you have. So that's why these levels are a combination of skill, but they're also a combination of knowledge. So we're going to talk about information and how we're going to train that rather than just read books, rather than just watch tutorials. We need to go beyond that. We need to essentially become an athlete, not just a scholar, not just someone who's reading about these things. We need to be practitioners. For everything that we read, the practitioner has the added task to also then drill, practice, and internalize that information. Whereas the scholar can just go from book to book very quickly and amass a huge amount of information. It's not information that we're after here, it's training, it's ability. And that means that everything that we do needs to have a practical application. So our levels and our skills will be very closely connected. You can also see these colored dots here, and they correspond by levels and skills. You can see that copying goes over here with some basic mechanical skills and basic perceptual skills. Then as you get better and you start opening more and more of these levels, you can see that now we have 2 dots. And not only is the first dot a prerequisite, but these levels are also cyclical. You're never just going completely up or completely down. There's always a stacking of these things where you're going from one to the other. Maybe you're trying the next one. Maybe sometimes you even go from number 1 to the last one here, but then when things don't work out, you really get back over here. Like with any RPG game, some areas are just locked off for you and you need to spend some time, maybe go in a forest and collect mushrooms for a little while and fight with some big cockroaches or whatever you find over there. But ultimately you keep trying to go back and trying to go back. And when you do manage to go through some of these levels, you then also, you have another go at the whole thing. You start over. These are cyclical, because there's always more room for improvement, there's always more training that can be done, and you will also find that as you progress, you begin to feel the need for a stronger foundation. You actually begin to feel the need to go back and practice something that you don't feel is strong enough to be able to allow you to not think about the technical things, but more and more and more unlock the creative side, and not just have to stay and constantly practice technical skills, but be able to use the technical skills fluently to just express what ideas you have. We're also going to look at some traps as we go along, and these are things that I've found out through my years of training and working with people one-on-one, and all the videos I've made on YouTube and all the comments that I've gotten. We all are pretty similar. There really is nothing special about me. If there's anything that you see that I've been able to do, there's absolutely nothing that I have that you don't have. We also have these common things that we tend to get stuck in. For instance, copying here is our first level, but a very big problem for a lot of people is that they don't use copying as a means to train accuracy, which is what we'll be using it for, and this is what we'll talk about it primarily when we get to that. But we get stuck in copying, as in this becomes our way of primarily engaging with an image. So everything that we see, we ultimately just get stuck in this level of constantly just whatever I see, I just translate it 100%, and if it's not 100%, then it's probably wrong. But the job of an artist isn't to copy things. The job of an artist is to creatively select and edit in order to create a message that expresses their idea. Artists are visual communicators. We have things in mind. We want to create an experience. We want to create an image that has a mood or makes someone feel a certain thing or has a certain idea that we want to convey. Or it might just be something funny. It might be something silly. But whatever it is a message that it carries. So it's rare that you will end up having to copy something 100% unless it's for training. But the training is so difficult that we often get stuck in the training, and the training becomes the end and not the means. We start getting obsessed with, well, my lines aren't straight, so I'm going to do lines for the next 10 years. I'm going to do lines until they're perfect. And the thing is, okay, cool, what does that straight line give you at the end of that 10 years? Is your art better now? Is your message clearer? Is it stronger? Or did you actually need to only practice lines, let's say, for a couple of weeks? And then maybe later on, if you find that it's becoming a constraint and it's not allowing you to do your creative work, then maybe go back and practice them some more. But the practice needs to be as needed, not the end goal. So some of the traps are things that we get stuck in for far too long, misconceptions that we might have, and common mistakes that we make, like rushing through things, not really taking time to work out the particular problems of the image we want to make, but just being insecure and wanting to rush right in there and just get started just so we can see something on our page that will hopefully make us feel optimistic about the end result, that we'll hopefully be able to finish. A lot of times though, unfortunately, no strategy leads to failure. Or we get stuck in style, we get stuck in, well, how do you draw like this? Or how do you do that? How do you draw this particular thing? And really there's a common thread in all drawing. So it's based on principle. A lot of it is based on science. There is a very clear cause and effect relationship. Otherwise, if you had to memorize each and every single thing, and if you go about asking, well, how do you draw a nose, and how do you draw an eye, or how do you draw a plant, how do you draw a tree? Well, it really isn't about how you draw these individual things. It's what does drawing do? What is it for? What exactly is drawing responsible for? What purpose does it serve? These are things that are gonna free you up to be able to use whatever style you want, to make it a choice rather than a constraint. It's not like I just learned to only draw things with an outline and only in this type of style, let's say. But the more you understand, the more freedom you have to choose how you want your final image to look and not be a slave to a style that you may have learned. We're also going to look at some maps, and essentially the maps are going to be things that I've tried to put together to hopefully clarify for you a little bit their antidotes to the traps, really. So I'm going to try and give you a big picture view. So one of the most common things is that we don't know what it is exactly that we're doing. So this is essentially the topic of this talk. I'm going to try and give you a better understanding of that as much as possible. Sometimes when you get a bit more skill and things actually start to feel different, like when you're drawing, you're not always constrained by having to do things in a very rigorous, meticulous, painstaking way. When you get a little bit faster with things, you're able to do stuff faster. Things begin to feel different because drawing is, to a large degree, it's a skill. And with every skill, the goal of it is to free up your brain to be able to think about higher level things rather than being concerned with the mundane, the technical. And this does happen, this does exist. I remember speaking to my niece when she was a little girl and she was just getting into drawing, and I was too. And I was telling her about how at some point you won't have to think about these things that are so difficult right now. And she was looking at me like she didn't really believe me. She was like, okay. And at the time, I myself wasn't too sure that that was ever going to be the case, because I was struggling with it for quite some time and I really wasn't seeing much difference. But essentially, when you're training skills, you are in a way developing a very complex behavior. Your brain speeds these things that you are repeating by a tremendous factor. It makes you a lot faster. When you've done something 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times, you begin not having to think about it, and you also begin to build intuition. That's one of the things that makes a professional artist much better than a beginner. It's the fact that they have done certain things so many times that their brain has changed at that stage. They have a much faster brain, a way more optimized towards drawing brain, which is why just telling someone what to do or explaining a certain technique or way of doing things doesn't mean that you are immediately able to do it as well. You need to train that thing. You need to take that information and build it, incorporate it into your brain. And then when you train it, you speed it up. And you're able to produce the correct result much faster with a lot less cognitive effort, which then means that you're able to think about ideas, you're able to think about design, whatever the higher level of your thinking is, whatever purpose you want to have for your image, you're able to spend more time there and not have all your mental capacity sapped by, is this line going to the correct vanishing point? Is this in perspective? Is the proportion correct or not? These things start getting taken care of for you. And finally, why this is set up kind of like a game is because really, in order for you to be able to do this for a long period of time, you really need to be enjoying yourself. You have to love what it is that you do. And sometimes love isn't an easy thing. Just because you love something doesn't mean that you want to do it always. Games do sometimes get boring. That's why it's very important to find things about yourself that you can connect to your practice. For me, I love practicing. I love training. I started going to the gym when I was about 14 years old, and I remember by the time I was about 16, I remember I was in the gym, and I remember vividly. I remember where I was, I remember what I was looking, I remember the scene around me, because I remember that thought just stuck with me so much. I remember thinking that if there was a way for me to just do this as my job, if I could just train and that's my job, I would be happy. Like, I would literally want nothing more than that. So about 10 years later, when I started getting into drawing, when I discovered art, I really started trying to connect that to my character, to my personality. I wanted the things that I enjoy, I wanted to kind of transpose them onto art. And like I said, one of the things that I really love, I love training. I like going against something that's difficult. I like struggling with it. Weightlifting is all about struggling. But art and design, a lot of it is about just, hey, I don't know how to do this thing, but it needs to get done. And the only way to do it is you just keep re-engaging and you just keep working at it until you just figure out some sort of solution. It's never perfect, things could always be done better, but it really is just all about the practice, the training, the willingness to engage with something difficult, not being afraid, not running away from challenge, but going towards it. And really that's what you get with a good game. A good game, you might die 100 times in a minute sometimes, but you're having fun, right? It doesn't matter that you didn't beat the level. It doesn't matter if the boss was too hard. You want to go back and you want to do it again. Not only that, sometimes you'll play the entire game all over again. Or you play it at the next difficulty setting. You want it to be hard. If it's too easy, it gets boring. So one of the good things about a game is that it's challenging. Well, what you're involved in right now, this process of becoming a better artist, improving on your craft, this is very challenging. If you look at the mountain, if you look at the absolute end goal of where you want to end up, that might be too much. That's like starting out on level 1 in a game and trying to go fight the end boss. If you could beat the end boss at the very beginning, there would be no point in the actual process of the game afterwards. The enjoyment of the game is going through the game. It's playing the game. And art for me at this stage is very much like a game. I've made all these things that I would normally need different outlets for, like if I want some entertainment, if I want some novelty. Well, with art, I can essentially research different things, I could draw different things, or if I want something that's different, but at the same time still related to art, maybe I'll learn some software. I might learn some 3D modeling, I might learn some sculpting, I might learn CAD modeling as opposed to just a regular modeling package like Modo or Maya or any of those. I might just go and do something that's still related to art, that still improves my art, but it's slightly different. And to me right now, it kind of feels like a mini game. Because modeling is essentially the same as drawing. It's just that instead of just being able to make a line or make a shape with your hand, with a tool like that will allow you to just put points wherever you want them to go, now you have to go and you have to figure out, well, how do I make the same thing, but it's made out of squares? Or if it's CAD modeling, how do I make these shapes and how do I subtract them one from the other in order to make a new shape that will then give me what it is I want? It's kind of like a mini game. It's always drawing, but it's slightly different. So instead of playing games, I now, well, it sounds sad, I guess, but now I learn software. And that just gives me the novelty. It gives me the enjoyment of having some novelty, but still keeps my art progressing. And I'm saying this because, obviously, I want you to consider what makes things fun for you. What do you engage with most? Your personality type might be very different from mine. The way that I see art might be very different to how you see it. The way I engage with tasks might be very different to how you do it. So what is it about you that what do you enjoy doing most? What types of activity, what types of challenge do you enjoy? And how could you possibly relate that to your art practice so that no matter what it is that you're doing, it's feeding into your primal motivations, into the things that make you who you are, that energize you as you do them, rather than drain you and it's now hard and it's a slog and I really don't want to do this, and if this is what it costs, if I have to do this many boring drawings in order to be able to get better at this thing, well, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it like that. And this is the point. You don't necessarily have to do it in that particular way. There will always be difficult things. There will always be boring things. There will always just be information that you sometimes just need to go through. But you can find ways to connect that and to change it slightly in how you engage with it in order to make it fun. If you dislike something, do it for a short period of time, but in a consistent manner. Do it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes in a day. And then that's it for the entire day. And you get your check mark, you get your thumbs up that you've done well. And then you go and you do what you enjoy more. That still gets to use that thing that you just learned though. So you get to practice it, so you get to drill it, so you get to encode it into your brain. Because ultimately, it's all a game. Art is just this game that you play, these different various little skills that you need to learn and combine together in order to make something. A video game is pretty much the same thing. You get given different tasks, some of them are pretty boring, you get to do them, you get your rewards. Find ways to arrange your practice like it's a game and it won't feel like work, it'll just feel like play. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting. I hope that you find the final helpful. This will primarily be the blueprint, the roadmap, the taking you through all these different skills. I've recorded a lot of examples showing you different styles, different artists. So what exactly does drawing do? What is it responsible for? How come it gets done with lines sometimes with tone? What is it that's the underlying visual language behind all this stuff so that you can then choose if you want to do line or if you want to do tone and you're not just constrained to either the reference that you're looking at or some sort of convention or style that you've learned. My initial idea when I was recording this is that I really just wanted to get it done as fast as possible and then run away again. I really felt the need to go in and keep working on my own work because I have so many things that I need to improve at. So I recorded it at first. I ended up with about 2 hours of material, and then I really didn't feel like it was enough. So I decided to change what it is that I'm ultimately going to be doing with it. You will have many clips of this here on YouTube, and of course I'll be answering your questions as we do right now, and I'll be trying to help with whatever I can. But ultimately this will become either a Gumroad or a digital download of some sort. So it will be a product, but it will be priced in a way that anyone can afford. The thing is that this has taken such a massive amount of time and effort, and I'm pretty much full-time working on this right now to be able to finish it. Instead of the 2 hours that I started with, I've re-recorded everything now, and I have at least about 4 hours of lecture and examples right now, and I'm also recording some demos and different types of drawing. So I'll be drawing an image and then redrawing it and then redrawing it again, just showing you different ways that you can think about it, or how you can construct the same image, whether two-dimensionally or three-dimensionally, just showing you the thinking behind all of these things that we'll be talking about in the main lecture. But also one of the main things that makes this so difficult and why I keep having to re-record things over and over again is to just try and clarify things, because there's so many different things that go into this. You have to learn to build skills. You essentially need to be almost like an athlete. We need to train like an athlete rather than just sit and study, read through things, which is how we've all been taught to learn. And we really need to shift what we understand by learning. And I'm finding it also so hard to try and detangle all of these things together. Like, where does drawing stop and where does painting begin? How do you decouple, let's say, light from drawing, so that you're able to focus on structure and truly understand what drawing is responsible for without having all of these side peripheral skills that you also may not have developed sabotage your drawing, because you're just trying to do far too many things at the same time, not realizing that there are boundaries in between all of these small little minor skills. So it's taken a lot of recording, editing, re-listening, re-recording, going back in, re-explaining, more footage, more different things. So it turned out to be way bigger than I thought it would be. Because if I knew how long it would take, I probably would not have committed. I would probably say that I wouldn't be able to finish that. It's too late now. Okay, that's it from me. It's back to work time now. If you found this helpful, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. I also have a special offer from New Masters Academy. These are essentially the people, Glenn Vilppu and Steve Houston specifically, I spent a year with when I did my 10,000 drawings. I spent a year with online, basically. They have no idea that I even exist, but I definitely have benefited a tremendous amount from them existing, so thank you for that. They're essentially the people responsible for my feeling form level over here. When I actually started to be able to not think so much about what it is that I'm doing, but just automated drawing, and it became something that I could kind of just feel space. This is what Glenn Vilppu talks about when he's saying about, I'm feeling the shoulder, I'm feeling the pectoralis, I'm feeling the pull of this, how this is going in and coming out. I had no idea what he's talking about at first, and then I realized that with skill development and training, you can actually start feeling like this piece of paper that you have, this flat surface, is essentially, your brain will kind of map space onto that thing, so you can start feeling how things are actually going in and out. Which then makes things a lot more simple, because you don't have to construct everything like crazy or just be looking at 2D shapes. All that stuff is in the understanding drawing as well. So I will shut up right now. If you go to checkout, type in code VOLENCK, VOLENCK, all one word, you'll get 15% off for the entire duration of your subscription. So each and every month, 15% off. I think that's everything from me. Thank you all very much for your patience. Thank you for your support. Keep on working, and I'll see you soon.